Namaste and welcome to Satsang. So Satsang is for the direct, direct realization of the truth of our being, and also more than just seeing and realizing, actually coming to live as what we are. And to do that, we have to be willing to challenge the thoughts and the assumptions that we've had that perhaps we haven't realized are untrue. Each concept that we believe it is going to make us feel more limited, more separate from everything, from life. It's going to seem to cut us off from the resources, from the feelings, from the states that we want. And it really is just going to narrow our perspective of what is actually real. The truth is that you are infinite and everywhere all the time, that there is only the one being, and it's experiencing itself as all of these forms and all of these human beings, and it's manifesting in all these different ways to have a different experience of itself. But to come to live as that consciously and effortlessly, there are certain thoughts that have to be challenged and questioned. So I'm going to continue reading today from my book, Now That You Are Formless, Contemplations for Self-Revelation, because as I said, just briefly, as I said last week, there was a very long gap for me between first seeing what I was, having a revelation of it, having an experience of it, and then it becoming a stable, effortless, continuous state or lived experience. There isn't really a word for a continuous experience, but state perhaps is closer. So in this book, I've tried to write down the core of the things that I contemplated, to stretch my thinking, to sort of really point out where my thinking was keeping me experiencing that life as a separate being. So last week, part one is already on YouTube if you want to go back and listen to that after. So I'm just going to continue from where I finished last week. And this is chapter 6, Discovering You Have No Location. As you check in with yourself and find the you that has no form or shape, you might begin to notice that you cannot find yourself in any particular location. You are obviously here to search for yourself, but when you look, what you find is the you that has no location. So your body has a location. It's in a certain place in time and space, and we're so used to referencing that to reference ourselves. But what about you, you that is not your thoughts in your body? What location do you have? What does this mean for you? It means you cannot say that you are only here in this body. That no longer can be true for you. It also means you cannot say that you are beyond the body, as that involves a location of everywhere but the body. These statements may seem weird, wrong, or true, but either way, you must not stop your contemplation until you've experienced their truth. So if I say, I am beyond the body, I am saying that I'm not actually in the body as well. I'm excluding that location. And if I say I am this body, then I'm excluding everywhere else in my understanding, and I'm going to experience being limited still. If you keep looking and finding no location, you'll also come to know that the categories of thought such as everywhere and nowhere also do not apply to you. Which of these are you? Neither or both, or beyond both? All these thoughts have been used to describe you, but they really do not apply to this locationless you. So if you have no location, what does that mean? It means I can't say I'm here, and I can't say I'm over there, and I can't say I'm moreover that side, I really cannot say where I am. And if you directly look at what you actually are, and for a moment you don't reference your body for a location, your body is, my body's sitting in this chair, but where am I? So it begins to break down this idea that I am here in one location. Contemplating these points deeply will bring you to an experiential knowingness that is irrefutable. It will show you that you are inside everything, and everything is inside you also. Which is most true? Both and neither. As you come to see that you are all pervading, and that you're not absent anywhere in the universe, you'll begin to see that there is nothing other than you. When you are ever present in and as all things, you cannot have a void or a lack anywhere. You are allness, and as such there can be nothing else but you. There is nothing other than you. You are all there is. Realizing this deeply will bring profound love for all creation because it is known to be you. The essence of everything is you. You are also the shapes and forms too. So this is where the love comes from, that is a hallmark of the awakened state, is because everything has been seen when we contemplate this way deeply to be ourself. And instead of relating to everything in our life as other, and we either fear it or we want it or we don't want it, we're pushing against it or trying to grab it, then there's this knowingness that develops that all of this is you, that there is only the one being, and there isn't anything out there to hurt you. It becomes a deeper seeing, and that naturally brings more love into your life and into your experience. Doesn't necessarily mean you like every way that you are appearing, or that you would want to spend time with some beings. Perhaps you prefer a different or similar energy level to yourself. But love is acceptance of what is, rather than necessarily liking. Isn't there a difference there? There's a big misnomer, I think, in spirituality, that I'm going to fall in love with everyone, no matter what they're like. But you fall in love with the essence of everything, which is the same essence of you. Chapter 7, Understanding Your Wholeness Before Division. As usual, let's first check in and notice and be our formless self. Looking and finding no objective self yet again, we can confirm that we are formless in our essential nature. Take a look at this formlessness and see that what is hearing and perceiving the thoughts in your head. If you ask yourself what hears this thought, then you'll be taken right back to this same formless you. That which hears thoughts is not affected by thoughts. How can you know this? If you look and confirm that thoughts arise out of this formless you, they cannot affect you. If you are the source of all thoughts, you cannot be affected. After thoughts arise, some are paid attention, and we begin to call them my thoughts. But how can they be yours if they are arising out of you? Just as steam will rise out of a hot cup of water, so too thoughts arise out of you. So if we say my thoughts, we're kind of saying that they belong to me, that they're clinging to me, or that they're affecting me. But if they're arising out of you, it's like the ocean saying that the waves are affecting it. The things that arise out of the ocean are affecting it. This is what we're doing with our thoughts. If you can see that thoughts come directly from arising out of ourselves, then we're going to change the way that we interact with thoughts. When we say they're my thoughts, then we set ourselves up to be separate from them and have to keep experiencing them. It may seem like a small change in how we think and feel about them, but it's a massive experiential difference. Okay. Just like the hot water, it is your nature to allow things to manifest. If you see that thoughts arise out of you, then you can no longer believe that thoughts can trouble you. The water is not affected by the steam, and really the water and the steam are the same thing appearing in different ways. So to you and the thoughts, are the same thing. Why is this important to grasp? Well, if you can establish yourself as that formless presence that is before thought, you'll no longer be able to divide yourself into a me and everything else other than me. Division or separation can only occur in thoughts. So that's really, really vital to understand. If we've come to access our formless self and we've really begun to experience that, then we're going to have to eventually come to see that that cannot be divided. Just because every human being thinks that they're separate from the whole does not mean it's ever been so. And when this is really realized, it's the most profound experiential difference in your life. Only when we start thinking can we seem different and separate to each other. As soon as the thought forms, I forgot what I am, and is believed, we have a big journey on our hands which can seem to culminate in, I remember now what I am. But you are before thought. You are the place that cannot be touched by thoughts. Where would thoughts stick to anyway in the formless you? Come to know experientially that you cannot be divided, and that what you are is allness of the unmanifest, manifest, and beyond even that classification and division. You are the all and the only thing that exists. Only later, when thought comes and a human body appears, can there be separation and union with God, bondage and liberation. Chapter 8. You are the unchanging one. Your true nature is not changing, and you can begin to recognize that right now. Take a look at what is here right now. What are you? Not counting thoughts, feelings, or anything else that comes and goes. Look and see. There is something about you that simply is. Get to know this aspect of yourself as it is in your it's you in your purest essence. Of course, you have a body, thoughts, feelings, and a life, but this is your true home. Spend some time just exploring what it is like to be this formless you. Notice that if you are formless, you are not changing. So you can just take a look at the space in the room and the room that you're sitting in. And then the room that you're sitting in is kind of sitting inside this moment of now, isn't it? This formless now moment, this ever-present thing that's not changing. Now isn't changing. What's appearing inside now seems to be constantly changing, but that itself isn't changing. The root of all fear. As human beings, we live our lives against a backdrop of fear, usually a fear that is so deep within us and prevalent that we're not able to handle it consciously. This is the fear that one day we'll begin to age, perhaps suffer from illness, disease, and more challenges we can associate with older age, such as poverty and loneliness. This fear comes from one very basic belief within us that we are separate entities making our way through life and the world, and that we were born and one day we will die. The root of all fear is based upon the fear of annihilation or non-existence. It's not even feared so much that the body will die, because we know that is true. So it's obvious our body one day is going to go. What we really fear is what that means for us that seem to be living in this body. What does it mean for me when my body goes? And if I am associating myself with the thought forms of the ego, thinking that is me, then I will seem to also disappear, come to an end, cease existence when the body does. So it really serves us to look at this deeper. The main root of this fear is that we think without the body we'll not be able to experience anymore. As you read this, look again within yourself, confirm yet again that you are not anywhere in particular, that you cannot find a separate entity called me. Of course you exist, but not as a separate someone inside a body. Notice also that this sense of you is not changing. It's simply effortlessly here, noticing the thoughts, feelings, and sensations coming through in the senses. You are the unchanging one. Contemplate over and over what it means that you are not changing. What does this mean for you? Can you age? Can you deteriorate over time? Will you suffer from the effects of an aging body? Can you change? So all of our fear is based upon this idea that I'm going to be affected by the body and I'm dependent upon my body for my existence. So in this chapter, we're trying to really undo that idea. You must drink deeply this knowledge again and again that you're not changing, because only then will it begin to have an effect upon you. You'll begin to notice you're watching everything that happens to your body and you're not affected by it. You are simply here, watching, not getting involved. Thoughts get involved, but not you. Thoughts have opinions on what happens to the body, but you witness these also. Can you contract a disease? Can you have another birthday? Will you ever draw a pension? If you look deeply enough, you will see that all these things are happening to your body and not to you. If you are indeed the unchanging one, then it must also be true that you will stay just as you are right now, eternally. You will be just as you are right now, forever. I do not mean you will feel the way you do right now, or that you will have the same thoughts forever. I mean you as you really are, the formless and timeless one. This is what you will always be, and even when this body fails you, then you will not be affected. You are outside of time. Anything that's changing is subject to time, isn't it? It involves two states for change, what it was before and what it changes into. And that's just not possible for something that doesn't have a shape or a form or any attributes like your real formless self. So you are outside of time, or we could say that time is happening inside you. Whichever statement feels most true to you now, take it and contemplate it. If time is happening inside you, then birth, life, and death are also happening inside you and not to you. You are the formless construct in which life happens. Bodies are being born inside you every moment. They are born, they grow up, they age, and eventually die inside you. Death, illness, disease, and aging are concepts that simply do not apply to you. So hopefully it's fairly evident, even right now, what will happen when you contemplate these kind of ideas. Like, if I'm unchanging, the very idea of aging, of myself aging, is dependent upon the concept of time. Like, I am subject to time and I am subject to change. And is this really true for what you actually are? Chapter 9, recognizing you are the absolute awareness. One of the most common areas that we can feel stuck in realizing we are the awareness that never sleeps is this feeling that sometimes we are unaware. We might be trying to be the witness of a particular thought pattern or emotion that keeps coming up, and most times we can simply observe. At some point, our attention may drift, and we may feel like we are the ones identifying with thoughts and acting them out. We'll feel strong emotions too that correspond to those thoughts. This leads most people to complain that they simply cannot be the awareness all the time. So we may be making some effort inside ourselves to try to be the awareness, the formless self, constantly. A simple contemplation point can eradicate this belief that being aware is something we have to consciously do all the time. Nobody can keep aware as a separate person all the time, not even the Buddha. Checking in to see again what we are will reveal once again that we are not a thing. We are no thing. Things come and go, but not you. Things appear and disappear inside you, but not you. Notice that you are constantly here. When you begin to notice that you're always here when you look for you, you'll recognize that you are always here, and it is the waking state that is coming and going. The waking state is superimposed upon you. It comes and goes, but you do not. There is something that is aware, even that the waking state has gone, and it can report a lack of experiencing during sleep. So right now, your waking state is here, you're watching this, you're listening, and there's an awareness that you're awake, that your body's awake. But you also know that during sleep, deep sleep, there was no experience at all. There was no time, no space, no world. And then you also know if you had a dream last night, you can report that back. There was something watching that dream happening, even still. Checking in and seeing yourself to be formless and everywhere will begin to show you that you cannot be limited by time. What does this mean? It means that you must either be aware or not. You cannot be aware one moment and then unaware the next moment. Consciousness and unconsciousness are rotating states happening in front of you. So you are watching where attention goes. You're watching attention go to the self, turning around to look at itself, or you're watching attention go to thoughts, emotions, experiences. When attention goes to thoughts and emotions and experiences, we'll say, I didn't manage to be the awareness. I lost it in that time. But you're still the awareness watching the thoughts and the experiences. Same awareness watching thoughts and experiences, transfixed by them, hypnotized by them, as it is when it watches itself. There's no difference at all. It does not mean you're unaware, it just means you're aware of something else, something other. Contemplating the question, can I ever be unaware, will really take you into a deeper seeing of what you are. As you contemplate this question, stay with it until you reach a definitive answer that does not need any external validation from a teacher. Consciousness is the waking state, and unconsciousness is the sleep state, and both are simply alternating for you. You watch them from your true place. You'll begin to see that you are beyond and before sleep and waking. When you look for yourself, you always find something that is looking, that is aware. It's not in any particular location, and yet it is looking. Where are you looking from? You are the seer of all this, but where are you seeing from? So there's some unconscious assumption within all of us that I am here looking through my eyes, and that's the only place I am. But isn't every human being having that same sense of I am here looking? What if it's just the one being that's perceiving through every set of eyes, every form? Can you say for certain that you're only in one location and not somewhere else if you don't know where you are? It's really sort of vital to grasp that. You must want to see what you really are more than you want to still indulge in the idea that you are a person here on a spiritual search. It's a simple thing to say, but really to want to see what is true beyond all assumptions about myself is the key. Okay. We will skip one chapter. Let's see if we can. We'll go to chapter 11, seeing your wholeness before desire arises. So this is a common question that comes when people feel troubled by desire. And the idea of this book is to undo the assumptions that cause the suffering and help her to realize what the actual lived experience is of being the absolute reality. As human beings, we almost always want something from our lives. We usually want something to come to us that we have not as yet got, or we want to get rid of something that we have now. We can also want something to continue or stay in our lives that is destined to end or leave us. Most of our human suffering occurs because we spend a lot of our time fighting against what's happening to us, what happened before in the past, or fearing what might happen in the future. As we embark upon a spiritual path, most of us substitute all our normal desires for the urge and wish to wake up fully to the realization of what we are. We may even begin to suffer more than we did before we heard about the true self and enlightenment, and especially so if we've had a glimpse or an experience of that awakened state. It is not uncommon for people to spend years desiring some particular state or meditating to try and become some idealized version of themselves that they would like to be. The truth is already present, whole and perfect. It has no desire and it cannot suffer. Only once we believe our thoughts again and feel we are a separate person can we once again suffer. Stop for a moment and notice yourself just here. Notice that you are simply here. As you are right now, you can perceive this body, thoughts, perhaps emotions, maybe outer stimuli. But what you really are is here and not trying to get anywhere else. So the essence of desire is wanting to change something, wanting to get something, wanting to get rid of something, some negative emotion or something that's happening in our lives. And the greatest desire of all of these is the desire to wake up. But again, that is stating that we are not already that. So it's vital really to see even this desire, which will get rid of all of the desires, has to eventually be discarded, and we have to come to admit within ourselves, experience within ourselves, that you don't have any desires. Again, there's nothing wrong with desire. I have to say this because we're all trying to push away our desires. Just find out if they're your desire actually already. Notice also that your real self is simply being here. There is no separate person in this that you are to want anything or reject anything. Look again and again and be sure to confirm this until you see that all desires come from a rejection of the already perfect self by the mind. So if we were fully living the experience of what it is to be ourself rather than our thought assumptions in this moment, then desire could absolutely not arise. It's only because we're skimming the surface of our of what's available to experience in this moment that the desire for more comes. All desires really are based on the urge to feel better. I want this thing because it'll make me feel better. I want this thing because I'll feel good, and I want to get rid of this emotion because it'll make me feel better. And I want enlightenment because it's going to make me feel amazing all the time. But if we're diving into this moment right now, the fullness of what we are, we can begin to experience that there is a place where we don't want or need anything at all. There are no desires possible when you are simply being yourself. Check in again and see, just as you are now, just here, you do not actually want or need anything at all. Look again and confirm that you are effortlessly here and at peace just as you are right now. Nothing that you could acquire, receive, or become can make this right here and now any better than it is. No experience or state that you could feel would impact or improve upon the real you. The real you is simply present, aware, and unaffected by anything. Even once this body that you are using to perceive yourself begins to fail you and eventually drops, you will be just as you always were. Desire means you want or need something to be other than it is right now. Having a desire is not wrong, but we must come to see that whatever we desire is really only so because we feel it will make us happier, more at peace, or safer than we are right now. All of us can be coming into our satsang with this unconscious assumption that enlightenment is going to give me something that I don't have. Awakening is going to bring me a state of mind or peace or something that I don't already have. And the very assumption is causing us to feel bad. What happens if we question that assumption? that anything needs to change in this moment in order for me to be at peace. That I need to change in this moment for me to be at peace. As we begin to investigate what we really are, we can come to the startling conclusion that nothing at all can alter, change, or affect us. No thoughts, states, emotions, or outer circumstances make even a slight change to the already perfect nature of the self. You are invisible, formless, and ever present. You are reality itself, and you need nothing at all to be happy. Even as you begin to contemplate this place where desire cannot reach, you will see greater joy and contentment coming to you. Confirm and reconfirm through looking, seeing, and realizing that you are not in need of anything, nor can you want anything. You do not even need to know who you are, as that would only be a thought happening in this that you already are. You are already all that you could desire to be. So there's nothing in existence that is not you, nothing that will exist or has existed that is not you. What could you possibly achieve or become or acquire that is not you already? When this is really taken deeply inside, then desire just begins to fall away. You are already all that you could desire to be. Everything that happens and manifests is included in this wholeness that is so total that it can even allow a sense of incompletion, inadequacy, or unworthiness to be present. You need nothing. All is arising in you, and all is you. Okay. We will skip to chapter 13. Recognizing you are the undivided one, which includes all things. Once again, take a minute to look at yourself as you really are. Notice when you search for yourself, you only find a sense of you being here that you cannot touch, taste, or feel, and yet you are very much present. Notice also that you cannot find anything other than you, meaning you find only one thing, which is you. So when we self-inquire, when we ask the question, what am I? We find something intangible, formless. It doesn't have any edges or endings, any shape or boundary. And the realization will come as we continue to look at this, that it means that you do not have an edge. You go on forever. Only something that has a form, a shape, and a size is going to have an ending, a point where it stops, where it comes to an end. What does it mean that you are the only one you can find? First, take a moment to check and see if you can find an end to you. You'll not be able to find the end of you, and yet you'll seem to be only experiencing through this body and mind. So there is the infinite formless you that I was just saying goes on forever. And then it seems to be also that I am experiencing only through this mind and body. Why does it feel that I'm only here as well? Well, because there is sense perception coming in. There may be thoughts going on, experiences happening in the body, sensations, emotions. All of that gives a sense of being somewhere, a location as well. It's not in contradiction to your every-awareness. You just have to recognize that both are always present. The sense of being someone disappears at nighttime and when the body's gone. The allness, the every-awareness is always present and reliable. We'll have a knowing that we must be everywhere if we look closer at this. If we do not end and have no boundaries where you end and I begin, then how can there be anything other than you? I must be you. Anyone who reads this book must also be you. And everything you see must also be you. As you let the implications of seeing this come to the surface, you may find yourself feeling a little overwhelmed at first, or a lot overwhelmed, as I remember myself. Allow these feelings to come and know that you are revealing yourself to yourself. And as such, it can feel strange at first. For so long, we have thought of ourselves as being only here in this one body. When this belief begins to loosen its hold over us, it can feel like our whole life experience is changing. It's important to notice that the wholeness that you are is the formless you that you have been noticing, but also all the forms that appear in you too. We cannot discount the manifestation as being unreal or not important because they are arising out of you. We cannot begin to see that every thought, we can begin to see that every thought, feeling, opinion, and experience is also us and must be included in our definition of what we are. We must be mature enough to see that all that arises inside us is us. I do not mean only the feelings and thoughts that happen inside your body, but inside all bodies. So if you're everywhere and formless, and we've discarded the idea that I'm only here, or we're working on that, then anything that's appearing inside your everywhereness has to also be you. And we can say that these forms are not real in the way that we think they are, but they're real because they are a part of you arising out of you, also you, like the steam from the hot water. All of creation is you, showing up as various appearances inside you. All that ever was, is, and will be is you showing up in various different forms. All that will ever be born, live and die for the rest of eternity is you also. Take a moment to contemplate that, and although it may be difficult to accept, it can be experientially realized if you're willing to stay with this most important subject. So this is probably not something your mind is ever going to want to accept or actually find it possible to accept. You know, even if I tried to think about this now, my mind would suddenly be overwhelmed. But instead, I've just come to prefer the experiential knowingness of it instead. What are the implications in everyday life of this amazing revelation? It means that everything is you, and you can no longer blame, judge, or keep yourself separate from it. You must begin to take all that is inside you, and realize it is all you. I'm not speaking here about blaming yourself for some local atrocity that happens across the other side of the world. I'm simply asking you to come to see that you can show up in many forms, some enlightened and compassionate, and some hateful, deluded, and unloving, and all possibilities in between. This is not a personal thing. It is seeing yourself impersonally. What can you include in yourself now from this seeing rather than pushing away? If we take stock of our lives and look at what we're trying to get rid of from our life, the very moment we begin to realize it is us, we'll stop energetically pushing against it. And then if it's destined to leave our immediate experience, it will. Even if it stays, we won't be in constant conflict with it. Okay. We can come to include all the people we do not like as being us too. All those we hate and hate us. All the resistance that appears inside us is us too. All the positive and good things we have done. All the good things others have done to help us is also us. We must also begin to include God inside us as us. We must realize also that all the awakened beings, sages, and teachers we love are simply appearances inside us. All the things we wish to get rid of, such as attachments, and all else is simply showing up in a manifestation. So anything we're trying to get rid of or trying to acquire has to become to be seen that this is already me, already appearing inside me. When the seeing begins to flower and open for you, then you'll feel less and less fear. For what is there to be scared of if it is all you? What can hurt you, attack you, if it is all you? So this is a realization that's happening and deepening inside you, but it will also shift your experience that you're having in this particular body that you're listening to this in, because as there's less and less thinking and feeling about things and more recognition that it is all me, then what you begin to vibrate and emanate from the body, this peaceful transmission without fear, it is going to shift your entire experience. What you can draw to you is also going to have to resonate with that peace and that knowingness. Okay, we will two more chapters and then we're done. Okay, so if you want to ask a question, you can click on participants and begin to use the raise your hand option at the bottom of the blue hand, and it'll let me know that when I've finished reading this that you want to ask a question or share something. Okay. For chapter 14, seeing your infinite nature. The more we can slow down and take a moment on a regular basis to look and confirm that we are formless, the easier this process of coming to live as what we really are will be. So it's just taking small moments throughout the day when we have a minute to just check and see what is real about us. That every time we look, we don't find a someone. That every time we do find the intangible self that isn't in any particular location. It may be challenging at first to accept that we are formless everywhere and all-pervading, because we have been taught to value thought and experience more than anything else. In this chapter, we are going to look at how we come to see we are infinite. So this is a question I get very, very often. It's asking people asking why, what did I do to realize that I'm infinite, to really sort of know it, not just to have it here, to come to an experiential lived state. Infinite means that you go on forever, without limitation, without ending, and without boundaries. How can we come to know that we are all? How can we come to live as the allness that includes the unmanifest and the manifest? To understand this on a level deeper than the mind only, we must begin to look a different way. We cannot use the mind to understand what we are because it simply cannot. So right there, we can drop all blame and judgment of ourselves if we aren't already living as the formless self, if it's still just up here or just starting to be realized, because all of our life we're trained as human beings to try to understand things with our mind. But our mind is comparing finite objects. It's comparing and contrasting difference of attributes. It cannot understand or experience that which is everywhere and has no attributes. So it's just simply a shift of how you're going to try to see this, instead of thinking about it or expecting some aha moment to happen up here. Those may happen too, but they're not really the best way to understand this. We cannot use the mind to understand that we are what we are because it simply cannot. Even if we have the thought realization that I am the allness or the self, then we are still thinking about the self and not actually being it. So it's vital to understand that difference. I can have any thought, I am all-pervading, infinite, I am everywhere, but it won't change my experiential feeling because it'll just have the energy of a thought. It'll just be up here. Nothing wrong with that. But what we're all here for is a lived experience, the realization of that. The key is to understand the limitations of our mind and why it cannot go beyond time and space. Our mind is really a mechanism for sorting, classifying, and analyzing. It's a labeling machine. It might see objects through our physical eyes, and it might say bike or fish or anything that we can perceive. It might smell something through the nose and say smoke. Our mind takes feedback from the senses and labels it. We can begin to see that our mind can only think about something and cannot actually experience it. So the analogy here is, let's say I wanted to know what it's like to live in China, to be Chinese. Here I am in England, and I want to know what it's like to be Chinese, to live and experience all of that. So I could read many books about China. I could learn to speak Chinese. I could eat Chinese food. I could even go on holiday to China. I could even live in China, take up permanent residency there. But could I ever know what it is like to be Chinese? Or will I just know lots of things and have lots of experiences about it? So only by being something can we know it truly. Mind can only know about something, and there's a huge difference. A name or a label is really an abstraction of the thing itself. It is a concept to describe and define, but does not actually mean anything unless it's compared to something else. So I could say the word hot, I could use the concept hot. Does that mean anything unless I've experienced what cold is? It's opposite, or this set of opposites. Can I experience what the self is if I haven't experienced what ego is, or separation? Can I recognize the undivided state without having experienced my divided nature, in my imagination at least? So all of these are concepts that are going to be useful to your mind, but not to realization of the self. When we experience something from the viewpoint of thought, it gives the illusion that we are somewhere here in this body that is located in a particular place. The more we have these experiences, the greater our sense of being separate, of being someone. But if we check again to our real self, that is just simply here, we'll not find an object. We'll find a subjective sense of awareness. Something is watching and observing. That something is you. We can miss seeing who we are, and time again, if we expect to see an object to have an aha moment or realization about something. We must instead learn to perceive what cannot be sensed, felt, heard, or touched, and yet that is what we really are already. An object cannot perceive the subject. The witnessed cannot perceive the witness. So anything I'm looking at is going to be not myself inherently. Where a place I'm looking from is myself. Most of us are so used to looking at our egoic sense of being someone that we mistake that for ourselves. But you are still looking at it, you're still perceiving it inside you. As it begins to sink deeper into our consciousness, we could come to see that we are formless awareness looking through each body. We must come to a greater realization that we are looking, experiencing through all bodies all at once. Each individual body cannot experience the wholeness, but the wholeness can experience itself through each and every body. So you're never going to feel like you're everywhere. You're never going to have that experience of being everywhere. If it comes, it will go again. But the knowingness that's before thought is what we're looking for. A formless awareness is aware of whatever experience is happening in every manifest form. Some forms, such as humans, are much more aware of their surroundings, and in human beings, the formlessness can come to a true seeing of what actually is. This is happening right now as you read this. Let's keep this simple and once again check in and confirm that you cannot find yourself in any particular place. As you scan your being for its location, you will not find one. The most we can really say is that we are here. But here, in this sense, now means subjectively watching, and not here in any particular body only. We can say that we are here and everywhere, meaning we are the allness itself perceiving through all creation. And we also seem to be here in this body too, experiencing as a person. Which one is more real? Well, at first, the viewpoint of looking from everywhere will seem unreal, strange, and hard to grasp. The idea that you are someone trying to understand the Great Self will seem more obvious, and you might meet resistance when you try to question it. Over time and with consistent interest and curiosity, this will turn right around so that you can always know you are everywhere, and the sense that you are someone here in this body perceiving will seem as though it is now light and superficial. You know there are no others, but also you know that there might always seem to be. Can you handle this paradox? Yes, you can. It's only how you have always been. Mind eventually comes to a stop all by itself when we begin to see that the real self that we are is not thinking at all. It is the pure and undisturbed witness of all. You cannot be the allness experientially and still have a busy mind, because mind is thinking about what seems to be other than you. My thoughts, my emotions, my world, my relationships, my awakening even is what I'll think about. But when it is me, am I going to still be thinking the same way? If your mind is still busy, it simply means that you are not yet fully living as the self, and more contemplation must be done. Okay. One more page for the conclusion. Contemplating one of these chapters over and over, or all of them, is enough to cause a profound and powerful shift in your sense of self. It will begin to change how you perceive yourself from someone to being pure awareness. It's easy to come to a thought-based understanding of what we are and to know all about the allness. But few are the ones who make it all the way to living as the sages do. This is the purpose of this book, and it will help you to structure your contemplation and deepen your seeing. This book is meant to build upon itself, so that as you work on the contemplations in chapter 5, for example, you are simultaneously working on all the chapters. Each chapter will give you greater and greater clarity, and you will fall in love with what you really are. You would not be reading this book or listening to this now if you are not destined to wake up fully, beyond all thought and mind, to be a light in this world and to others seeking what you have become. You would not be reading this now if your enlightenment was not already in the cards. Take the time to look, see, and confirm what you are, and question every assumption, doubt, and block your mind seems to put up in front of you. Find a teacher to help you too, and stay open to help along the way. These words can help awaken a truth within your heart, but you must do the work to fully realize it. Otherwise, these are just words on a page of a book that you read once and put away. People often ask me the how-to of full awakening, but if you take this advice and follow it fully until the suffering has stopped completely, are you one of them? Okay. So we have a few questions waiting. We'll start with Bash.
Hello.
Hi, Bash. Excuse me.
Okay. Yeah.
You have a question?
I'm not sure. When all this started happening for me, it was the question was, how do you live from the space or as the space? But that's a question. That's a conceptual question in your mind, and there never seemed to be an answer to that. But I think it was an issue of control, really, because you can. It's this. I take your point that there's the awakening, but then there's living the awakening as well, and it seems the mind just wants to keep asking, how do you live from the space? How do you live from the space? How do you live from the space? But I'm beginning to realize that there's no answer to that question. There's just this space, and it seems to be an issue of control. So I was wondering if you could say something about that, which you kind of have done.
What do you mean by an issue of control? Can you expand on that?
I think for me, for my awakening, the mind took a good beating, but it didn't completely give up. And just by asking this question, how do you live from the space? What's the how to? It was trying to control. But there's not been an answer to that question. But the fear of, like before, it was how do you live from the space, and that's a very frightening thing, because the idea to the mind of letting go of control and letting things just unfold, I found initially very frightening. There's a certain out of control feeling. Well, because you're not in control. So but that's very frightening. I'm not afraid of that. I've just observed that the answer to the question of how do you live from the space seems to be this kind of deepening, which you've described, but a kind of osmosis, in that the fear of how do you live from the space goes, and but then it all starts falling apart, and the question just goes poof.
There is the question itself is coming, as you say, from mind, and the assumption that I'm not already that. It's asking, mind is asking, how do I live like this? And everything that every sort of awakened being has pointed to is that, any assumption, we're going to live out the assumption. So if I ask the question, how do I live from and as this formless being? Really, a more intelligent question would be, that can replace this one eventually, is why am I so sure I'm not already? That's the question that really took over in my consciousness, because, as you said, it was just no end. There was no end to that question. The moment I asked myself, how do I live from this? I immediately had the experience of not living from it. And there was just, that question was setting up a conflict that just wouldn't ever resolve. So I began to, there was fear as well also at the start, but as it deepened, there was a recognition that maybe this question itself is the challenge. Maybe there could be a higher question, a more direct way. Why am I so convinced that I'm not already living as this? That question will reveal a whole load of assumptions about ourselves that are still like thorns in our side, sort of deteriorating our experience.
Yeah. It's almost like in the space, the question just drops off, and I forget the question, so I don't know what the problem is.
And then you're undisturbed. It's only because the assumption behind the question hasn't been contemplated or challenged consistently that it keeps arising. There's just peace and quiet and nothing happening, and then suddenly this question will arise. How do I live as this? But that's always and only arising after some experience of not being this, because the energy of the assumption that the mind is still functioning in that way, that's something I have to get to, or perhaps more the more advanced we are in our seeing, we might feel we have to become it or even live as it. And all these are concepts that must go in the end.
Well, I think if you use the terms mind, ego, personality, persona interchangeably, what's always motivated my life from that identity has been fear. But there was a period I went through where I was not motivated by fear. So the mind then says, well, how are you gonna where does motivation come from? But I've seen through lived experience that I'm still doing things. Things are still getting done. But
the self has never moved through fear. It's moved because it wants to move. And then there's also been fear because our personal identity was believed in. That fear has never been the motivation behind doing something. even though mind is sure it is, right? You know, mind says, well,
yeah,
nothing's going to function if I just let go.
yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah,
But
but it's a different motivation
yeah,
that initially I would describe as very strange and weird. But yeah, it still seems amazing that things are still getting done. It's like I've made a major application recently that from an ego point of view would have been highly stressful. And I handed it in yesterday electronically. And I can't even remember the damn thing. I can't, it's not there. It's just not there. I don't, where is it? I can't, it's not. And it's very hard to explain, really. I wouldn't like your job, but I don't, yeah, it's like the motivation from ego is a fear thing. And I think there is a tremendous familiarity with that. And it felt like, you know, these men in a war who lose a leg and they always imagine the leg's still there, but it's not there.
yeah. And it never was. If we're speaking in metaphors, the leg was never there.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the ego doesn't have a leg to stand on, really.
No.
But yeah, yeah. Yeah. I try and articulate what I want, but I can't.
Well, thank you for trying. It's appreciate you sharing with us.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Fine.
We'll move on to Lopo. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing.
No, that's okay, Helen. Thank you
Hiya.
for having me on here, and I just want to thank you for your teachings, and they've been so helpful to me. Just starting to, you know, begin to see very smallly and things like that. I'm in a Narcotics Anonymous program at the moment, and yeah, my friend sort of guided me towards like Eckhart Tolle and other people around that, and it's been really good. The one thing that I think has just come up for me, and I'm really sorry it's not been sort of about what you've read about today,
That's okay.
is the thank you, is now not in a religious sense, because Narcotics Anonymous isn't a religious program, but it's the point, the concept of God, and I saw it doesn't contrast with what you're saying, or others of you know, that I've learned in my head from, but I'm, because as you've said, and others, sort of spiritual teachers like Muji and things like that, it's already inside you. You already are it. But then is that then saying that I don't need a God sort of thing, a higher power?
It's more like being willing to admit that we may already be part of that. You know, that the higher power is not outside or separate to us. That maybe all of this is an emanation of that. You know, classically, the classic perception is that I'm here and there's some higher power separate to me. And if that idea is in place, it's great for a lot of beings, but probably like myself, you're coming to start to experience that isn't enough, that to be divided, to feel separate from that. It is the core of our mind, our ego, and we will always be seeking, trying to find a way home with that idea in place, back to that wholeness. It also fosters the idea that we're not already completely whole within ourselves, that we are somehow broken away from that higher power, that great one being, whatever you want to call it. So the realization is more that I am that, but not in a personal sense, that this is the higher power is everywhere all the time. The classic description of God, you know, beyond form, beyond time, and it's experiencing itself as us and as all these species and all these creations, you know, that it's playing with these shapes and forms, and one of those shapes is a human being, in which it gets the idea that it's separate or it's lost its way or something like that. Can you get a sense of it?
Yeah, because when you know, sort of the whole sort of seeking guidance, or even the words, you know, forgiveness and things like that, and praying. But I've listened to other things as well, and actually, where did that word even forgiveness come from? You know, and that whole sort. So I'm trying to sort of work this program, and it's given me, you know, a heck of a lot of freedom. Either in mind or whatever, you know, but I mean, it's definitely kept me clean, you know, so but yeah, it's yeah, to I guess then to realize that it is all one and not separate. I am not reaching out to a separate entity, you know, it's already there. Yeah, thank you, Helen.
It just there's a readiness, isn't there, that happens when we're willing to expand our self-definition from for me, life as a separate being was just full of fear and wanting and needing to feel whole and approved of and loved and accepted and all of those things, constantly trying to feel better and always trying to measure myself up against the self or that higher power and never feeling adequate or worthy of that. In the end, that begins to fall away when we're sort of finally willing to admit we may already be that, right? You know, that we may be one of the appearances, the shapes happening in that, not separate to it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Helen.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Ian or Maggie?
Can you hear me?
You can, yep.
I had a lot of questions coming up when you're actually talking.
You've forgotten them all now.
I've been staying with a quest to try and dig out some kind of old kind of or well-established patterns. I've been staying with the question, is it true I'm not safe?
Yeah.
When every time I feel any kind of resistance to anything, ranging from a little like nervousness or when it's fear coming, I've been really trying to stay with that question. And I was just I'm having a lot of thoughts around thoughts, as well as having a lot it's really helping them, as well as having a lot of experience of just a lot more peace and a lot more calmness and a lot more kind of energy flowing and a bit more, you know, sometimes I just want to close my eyes and just, you know. There's also the mind has really started up again, and it's kind of like almost trying to pick holes in everything that you're talking about.
Why do you think that's happening?
Maybe because it's just going in like protective mode and kind of it thinks it's trying to protect me.
Mm-hmm.
It's really
kind of, you're about to break through some very well held belief, you know, as it was for me, real, like I said before, real fear. And right before, you know, I got to the point with the question where I could just easily go past the thought answers, and even if there was fear being felt, I could just carry on with the question anyway. And I felt like I was really gaining momentum with it. And there's more and more peace and a recognition of this stillness, this formless moment where I really am, which is just where my safety and survival are not even in question. And mind was suddenly trying, you know, to point out I hadn't done the laundry or, you know, that I've forgotten to. And it's right when you're trying to watch a satsang or something, it's like, hang on a minute, because from mind's perspective, it really feels that it's valid to hold on to this idea that you're not safe, because you may have had lots of experiences agreeing with that, lots of emotions agreeing with that, lots of thoughts about being not safe, so we kept on experiencing it. So mind is saying, do not at any cost let go of this belief, otherwise you'll leave yourself open and vulnerable to attack.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Mind can't see, or ego can't see, that all that has happened because of this belief. I'm not safe. That was the cause of all the experiences and the emotions.
Yeah.
You see, so it makes absolute sense from the mind's perspective not to ever let go of this.
Mm.
You know, how can you ever be the person you want to be if you let go of the idea that you're not good enough now? How can you ever feel safe if you let go of trying to feel safe? It just doesn't make sense to mind, does it?
Yeah, got you.
As the self, so it's gonna really push now, like, you must not let go of this or else we'll be in trouble. From mind's perspective, really, from the self, you can see, as the self, you can see this idea has been a seed in the mind that's caused these emotions and experiences based on this idea that I'm not safe.
Yeah.
So you can see it's safe to let go of that idea.
Yeah.
Your mind is never going to get that, and it's not supposed to. But it does mean you might have to be a little more careful not to lose the question or be distracted right at this sort of vital point, you know. I've
noticed that a little bit, that I've been forgetting to ask the question a little bit. It's a little bit less.
Mm-hmm. It's easier to forget the question when you're not suffering as much as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lots of nodding going on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everyone on Satsang's like, yeah. It was for me as well.
Yeah, I know I've done that a lot in the past. As soon as, like, I start to feel a bit better and there's more peace and calmness, and I just forget the question, you know.
Yeah. So it's just that, you know, maybe we just have to put a little more effort in right at the beginning when you're trying to, you know, if you watch a bird take off, it flaps like crazy to get off the ground. Yeah. Then it can kind of coast a little bit. Every now and again, it has to flap. I'm waving my arms around, you can't see, but it has to flap a little bit more just to stay up there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of like that a little bit. If you don't make your mind wrong and you don't sort of make it wrong for trying to protect you, you understand why is it trying to distract you right now?
Yeah.
And that from mind's perspective, it seems a very bad idea to let go of this belief.
Yeah.
Then you won't push against that distraction. You'll just go around it and go, you know, I don't need to stop this time with the question.
Yeah. So keep with the question and don't exclude anything that's coming up, kind of thing.
Yeah, thought answers are also answers out there to that question. Yeah. They're just not going to bring in a permanent peace that you're looking for, and a permanent security, the sense of being indestructible, which is what the self is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not making anything wrong. We're just aware that mind may try to, you know, because you're trying to throw away its map, aren't you? You know, and it's...
Yeah, it feels like it's something really kind of deep that's kind of held on.
Self-preservation. It's like if I don't care whether I'm safe or not, I'm going to be unsafe, mind says.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave myself wide open. And it seems very, very true from the mind. But so you're like encountering this little bit of resistance, you know, like I had it, you know, every way that I was contemplating, if I actually finally admit I am good enough, how am I ever going to improve myself and be an even better teacher? Mind says. It's like, well, I'm never going to fix it that way, am I?
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of see what it's doing, but you just carry on anyway without making it wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Good question.
Really hard. Thank you.
Thanks. Iris, last but not least, Iris.
It's Iris.
Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to say thank you, Helen. I really found it very, very helpful. And I've been doing like occultation labels. That's my background, and it's like I can see like myself before, like now I can see myself like observing the thoughts, and I can see myself observing the emotions, and and I can see myself sometimes even like judging those thoughts and those emotions. And it's very helpful to me, like to kind of learn to notice that I don't need to judge those thoughts and emotions. They're just arising, and 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 it's all me, like the all I, and I can learn to relax,
Yes.
and I can just be.
Yeah, it's vital, isn't it, when you see that?
Thank you.
It's amazing when you see that you don't have to push these things away.
New. Yeah, it's something new about practice, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's very helpful when you see we're only trying to push these emotions or these judgmental thoughts away because of some idea that they shouldn't be there. You know, that they shouldn't be. I always had this idea: if I was awakened, I wouldn't be thinking or feeling this way, and these things should go away. I shouldn't be feeling this emotion or shouldn't be thinking this way. But as you said, they're just arising inside me, the vastness of my being, they're part of me. If I don't have to go into relationship with them, trying to understand why they're there or what they're here for or what they mean or any of that, then there's a relaxation that happens naturally in that, isn't there? To just allow whatever arises just because it's arising. And it doesn't have to mean anything to me. It doesn't mean I'm failing in my awakening. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It's just, none of us can control what arises in our mind or our emotions. They're just what's happening. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Lovely to meet you. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you.
Thanks. Okay. We'll leave it there for today. Fantastic. So next week on Monday Satsang, I'm going to read from Transcending the Mind, which is a longer book, so we'll have to just read sections of it. It's really for those that like, it's a bit of a screwdriver to take apart your mind with the assumptions that are holding. Noisy mind is just sustained by several assumptions we haven't questioned. So we'll look at them in stages and how to undo those. So thank you very much for being here today as part of this satsang. Namaste.